welcome. I am Dogbert here to give you my DD5 recommendations for patch 6.6 if you're somebody who's looking to just start DD5 now or getting close to it. You don't know who to bring because obviously things change with every patch. New characters get released, and even now we know a bit more about the Horseman teams. So let's start talking about it. Why do I need to get Dormammu now? Can't I just wait to get Apocalypse? Well, Dormammu is very important to use in Cosmic Crucible. He'll, of course, help in Arena. Very important there. He helps make the Mystic Raid Nodes a breeze. And even the heart I haven't put in there, he's also part of a great war team if you're interested in war. The big things, though, are Cosmic Crucible, Arena, and Raids. Those are three things you need to be able to do in order to get Apocalypse 2, because you need to get those T4 ions. Don't I need to save teal gear for horsemen only? Well, you're going to see that I do talk about a lot of different characters who are not horsemen. I'm going to be very controversial and tell you, don't worry about the horseman teams until afterwards. So don't be afraid to gear 16 raid characters after you get Dormammu as well. This includes Dormammu himself. You're definitely going to want to gear 16 Dormammu. And teal gear has become much easier to get now. Now we have the whole Heroes and Villains campaign giving teal gear. Challenges have teal gear getting handed out. You can get more in the raids as we're getting more and more into the raids. It's just becoming a lot more normal thing to get and a lot easier to get. We have Cosmic Crucible Store. I forgot to mention that. So this is all saying that teal gear is getting much easier to get. And eventually we'll get a teal war orb as well. The real bottleneck to getting Apocalypse is T4 and T5 ions. And one last thing I'll throw in here. If you do not have Dormammu, you don't have all the Horseman teams to Gear 16, don't even worry about Gear 17 pieces, honestly. If you don't have those teams with the Gear 16, it doesn't matter if you have a Gear 17, whatever. You're not getting Apocalypse without getting everybody else to Gear 16. So worry about Gear 16 first. Once you have a good amount way there for your Horseman teams, then you can start worrying about Gear 17. This is especially important if you're buying things in the Cosmic Crucible store. Don't worry about those Gear 17 pieces at this time. You need to worry about the Gear 16 pieces. And you should be really looking into this by the mini uniques, because that's pretty much the only, and the uniques themselves, of course, mini uniques would be the only things you'd want to go get out of that Cosmic Crucible store. You don't want to buy regular gear because that's all farmable. So let's start off with who do I recommend? Well, for City. This might be seeing a little bit of a shock, but I'm not recommending She-Hulk at all. You will build She-Hulk after you're done with Dark Dimension 5. Yes, she is a Horseman character. Yes, she's the only one for City, but she is not good for Dark Dimension 5. I'm going to try to get you through Dark Dimension 5 as quick as possible with a good investment in good characters that you could, that when you're done, you will be able to look back and say, at least I'm using these characters and continuing going forward. So the City team I recommend is Squirrel Girl, Shang-Chi, Ghost Spider, Cloak and Dagger. Yes, Cloak and Dagger. Now let's go over this. Of course, Squirrel Girl, you know you are not going to be using in raids, but she is incredibly valuable inside of war on a defense side. Yes, that might suck, but she's also incredibly valuable in Cosmic Crucible, both offense or defense, depending on where you're using your Young Avengers. And quite honestly, she will be an MVP here in City. She is just really built for this. Her kid is really good. She is a very good character. You will not feel bad about having a Gear 16 Squirrel Girl in the future, just because of how useful she is in all those other sections. Shang-Chi is an incredibly valuable character and is part of the skill raid team. Again, he might be somebody who gets thrown in more defense again, but pretty much if you can use him, you're going to use him, whether it be in Cosmic Crucible, War, Raids. He's a skill character. There's no skill characters that are part of the Horseman team, so this is just gear that you're going to have laying around anyway. Here's a good use for it. Now, when we talk about Ghost Spider, we have to talk about the Web Warriors. This is probably one of the only two Web Warriors worth taking to Gear 16 still. Yes, I know there's a new raid team, new bio raid team, but to be quite honest, I still use Web Warriors. they get the job done in 3.4 once you learn how to fight the nodes. I can one-shot them. And if you're in anything less than 3.4, which you should be if you don't have Dormammu, well, they'll do the job there too. So, taking one of them to Gear 16 is not going to hurt. And she's a pretty good character. Are you going to use them much in Cosmic Crucible and War? Probably not. You're probably going to throw them in defense at most. But, she's still a good character. There's not a whole lot of options for City that would be useful everywhere constantly still to this day. And then we come to Cloak and Dagger. Let's talk about Cloak. Now, if you're going to break this up, the one to bring is Cloak. He is the better of the two. He's the cheaper of the two. You can use him standalone, but by God, do not bring Dagger by herself. You only bring Dagger if you're bringing Cloak. Now, Dagger would be the one I would say if you don't want to put the Mystic Gear into her, I understand. You want one of these three alternatives. And those three alternatives that I would replace Dagger with would either be Spider-Woman, who is now farmable later in those hard hero modes. She's an incredibly good character. You get an ability block, you get some defense downs. She will be very useful. The other one is OG Spider-Man. He does use a little bit of tech gear in his one piece. He's not so bad. He would pair up well with Ghost Spider. You have that whole little combo going on there. He's very dodgy. He brings a stun to the table. He's also very good. And finally, the last alternative would be Ms. Marvel, who would help out with this whole healer-brawler synergy, getting some assists there with Shang-Chi, and of course with Squirrel Girl being a young Avenger. So those are some things to think about, some things that you can do. Some alternatives for you as well, depending on where your roster is and what you want to build. Like I said, OG Spider-Man, Ghost Spider, Web Warriors could still do that. But if you really want to get through City the quickest with the least amount of headaches, you'd want to bring Cloak and Dagger, despite the high cost of Mystic Gear on Dagger. And once you get done with it, they are still very useful in raids. We just don't really use them because of the other characters we have. Let's move on to the next section, and that's Global. Now, Globals here is where you're going to be very tempted to just bring Horseman characters because it's loaded with Horseman characters. But quite honestly, the best team I can recommend for Global is the one right here. Spider-Weaver is a character you need to build for Apocalypse, and she is probably the best character in the game currently. You absolutely want to bring her. Nemesis is the newest character on here. He is a mutant, and he's part of a Horseman team as well, but he is fantastic in Dark Dimension because all his things are health-based steals. This means it's going to be a lot of damage because they have very big hit point pulls. Then we come to Gambit, another Horseman team member, and the one that you'd probably look to replace here, actually. If you maybe have too low of a stars, but he can do quite a good work, especially if he'll have a little bit higher stars, or maybe just like Gambit. Who knows? You're going to have to build him eventually anyway. And then here comes Dr. Doom. Honestly, he is still an amazing character. May not get as much use as he used to, but he'll still be very useful in War and Cosmic Crucible once you're done. He is a very good character, and he has a way of creeping up and coming back into metas and onto weird hybrid teams because of how powerful he really is. And last but not least is Captain Sam, skill character again. He is part of the skill raid team. You'll get a ton of use out of him as well, and he's a very good character, and again, skill gear. So like I said, the one you'd probably look to replace would be Gambit, and I would look to replace him with either Emma down here, Sharon Carter, or Maria Hill. Not necessarily in that order. Sharon Carter has high value over Maria Hill because of her control, but Maria Hill does bring heals to the table. Now, I didn't talk about the three Gamma characters here. That is Hulk, Abomination, and Brawn. If you're looking to bring any of those Gamma characters, you're pretty much going to want to bring all three of them together. They don't work as well just as individual pieces. They work much better if they're all together. And then Brawn, of course, has that big heal. They do work. They're not as good as the team I'm recommending, but those could be an option you want to look into if you really want to get them built. Now, the other options would be like somebody like the Bionic Avengers, but they do take some uniques as like Gamma teams and stuff. But they are also very good. But then again, you have to bring all of them, minus Iron Man, to make that team work. And then somebody else as well. But I have found that the best team is that team I've listed up at top. Like I said, you could swap out Gambit maybe for like an Emma or Sharon Carter would probably be the top two. Moving on to Cosmic. Cosmic's a little bit more weird here in that the recommended team, of course, is the Eternals still. They are the main driving force here. Kestrel, Hela, and Phyla-Vell, because she is bio. We don't really have a whole lot of bio characters coming into this. Hela is a very expensive mystic character, so I understand if you want to replace her. You would be looking to replace her with like a Nebula who's tech, a Gamora who is skill, or T'Challa who's a cheap tech option as well. If you don't want to put the investment into Hela and get all the gear you'll need for her, which is quite a bit. Deathpool and Doctor Strange Heartless are also good alternatives as well. If they want to fill in for either Phyla-Vell or Hela, but you definitely want to stay with that core three of the Eternals and Kestrel. Of course, Kestrel being part of the skill rate team as well. She takes skill and tech gear. There is no skill or tech on the Horseman teams, and the Eternals are just amazing no matter what. Still used in the arena, still used everywhere. You definitely want to use them. Of course, the big alternative everybody's going to go for is Doctor Strange Heartless, and he's okay in Dark Dimension. He's not great, that's for sure. He is, again, another mystic character. But no matter what you do, you're gonna whoever you take for the 5, you're gonna be replacing somebody on your second run with Dormammu. You definitely want Dormammu built for your second run. He makes things a lot easier, and you're gonna want Dormammu, period. And finally, we come to the easiest section to talk about, and that's Legendary. Might be a little bit controversial what I say here, though, but of course it is the 4 Horsemen plus Shuri is my pick for the 5th character. The reason being I'm picking Shuri, she gives energy, she heals, and she's tech. Because right now you're doing 2 mutants, a bio, and a mystic again. So having somebody who is a tech gear character who is very useful because she is a Wakandan war dog. You'll get tons of use out of her. Plus, you need heals anyway because otherwise they don't have a healer. Now, of course, the alternative everybody's going to go for is Magneto, and he's a very expensive mutant to gear up just for this, and he's really not that good inside of Dark Dimensions. So he might be somebody you want to do afterwards for the Death Seed team. A cheaper cost alternative who can also heal is Doc Ock. Now, he does take less tech gear than Shuri if you want to get in there a little bit quicker, but long-term value, Shuri is the better option at this time. But like I said, Doc Ock will get you in there quicker. You might want to consider that because he does take a little bit less tech gear than Shuri. Now, with all this said, that wraps up this video. I am sure there will be comments down below about how you should only build the Horseman teams. Yeah, I know. But the fact of the matter is, there's plenty of Gear 16 out there. The real bottleneck is T4 ions. It's not teal gear. Until next time, everybody.